Hello, this is Yarrow, and welcome to another Yarrow podcast. It's Sunday morning, and I'm recording on my phone as usual, giving you a quick piece of advice on something that I've recently been talking about with a coaching client. And it's something that I've also personally been up against and thought about a lot as my career as an entrepreneur progressed. So, what am I referring to? Well, it's what I call key man or key woman risk. You may have heard of this term before. It refers to you being the center point or a key asset in a business, and your business can't really run or operate successfully without you doing certain core functions in the business. It's typical for businesses where you're the content creator, you're the influencer, you're the marketer, it's your face on the videos, it's your writing, it's your podcast voice. And also it can be if you're the product creator or the service delivery person. This is a big issue for freelancers when you're starting a new services business and you're the freelancer delivering the service. It's certainly an issue for course creators, educators, because more often than not, you're the one delivering the coaching, the training, creating the courses. Very common for creator-based businesses. If you're like aiming to build a YouTube following or a podcast or have a newsletter and you're the one producing the content. So it's actually a fairly significant problem. And more often than not, it's a problem from the very start of your business because, you're an individual. I was like this. Every business I started, especially in my 20s during my sort of first decade of being an entrepreneur, I was there doing most of the work for the business almost from start to finish. I did have people help me. I had staff eventually. My agency perhaps is an example where I did realize the need to, from the very start, have people who were providing the service for me. That was my first agency back in the early 2000s. But I was still the driver of getting every single client. Now, that being said, over time, I was able to get some automation, some systems in place. So customers would start to come from places like Google, whether I was working or not. So there was some value, and I actually want to introduce another term here. It's called enterprise value, which basically means the value of your company to the market, like what you could sell your company for. And as you can imagine, a company with very big key man, key woman risk doesn't sell for much if it sells at all, because if they take you out of the equation, is their value of the company. Now, in recent years, there's been situations where this might have seemed like a major issue, like with a big creator who has a huge following and they still manage to sell their company. But I will tell you, for a lot of the smaller businesses, you're not going to get a great multiple if you're such an important piece of the puzzle for making that business succeed. What you want is a business where you step away for months or years or forever, and it continues to do what it does, ideally continues to grow. That's the holy grail. If you build a business that has a marketing system, a value delivery system, a customer support system, and a growth engine, everything there without you being a key part of those processes, then you built something that's truly sellable. This also plays a part into the business model. Some businesses have a better enterprise value than others, but we don't really need to go into that right now. I want to focus mostly on this issue of being the key person where your business could collapse. So I say this because I've got a coaching client right now who's in that situation, and we were talking about like, what does he want in terms of moving forward and breaking free of this risk? Like, is it important to take yourself out? And this is actually an interesting question because sometimes the answer is no, and you should just keep being that key person regardless of the risk or the detriment it is to the enterprise sellable value of your company, because you're just reaping so much cash flow, so much revenue, and you want to do the roles you're doing right now, and you're fine with not selling your business, at least in the short term, and you just want to capture as much value as you can. Now, that's actually sort of the attitude I had with my second successful business, my education business, where I was very much the voice, the face, the teacher, the coach, the educator, the marketer, and everything. And I knew going in from the start, and as I grew the business, it wasn't going to be sellable. I never considered it something I would sell, but I was making a very large profit margin because a lot of the work was done by me. And I also had some very good systems in place where I could gain a large profit margin simply because of the business model, where you're selling digital education using free content that I was producing myself. Now, I worked hard, long hours writing content, but I enjoyed most of it. So it wasn't a painful business to grow. And especially at the time in my life where I was looking to make my first breakout income stream. This is the point where I had yet to have an income stream where I felt I could, move out of my parents' house and be financially independent. I had that to a degree with my first business, the services agency, but to be honest, it was living on like bare bones, just covering rent, just covering food. It wasn't enough to feel like I was, truly thriving, succeeding. So when I switched to my education business, my profit margins were bigger, my revenue was larger, and I was fine doing what I was doing, knowing that I was like the breaking point, and I was also learning a lot and wanted to be in that position. Fast forward though, you go to the situation I'm in now, I wouldn't necessarily start a business based on myself if I wanted to sell the business. That's the key part of the question here. If you're going to sell a business, you have to have a mindset of I'm building a system that runs and creates value without me. And the better you do a job of that, the more money you actually make at the end. Even now with my current agency, which really does largely run without me, there is a situation where I'm still seen as a leader of the marketing department. So a buyer of my company would look at that and go, well, yeah, you're not necessarily like the business would run without you, but the leadership role still needs to be filled. So the new owner has to find a person to step into the leadership role. In fact, that's the same for my co-founder. We're not like key people where the business falls apart without us, but they're roles that do need to be filled. So there is an element there that requires the potential buyers to factor that in when valuing our company, which means, paying salaries or paying money to the people that replace us, which can ultimately decrease the profit margin of our business when calculating its value. So, that's something that my co-founder and I think about. At the point we do want to sell, maybe we should have people in place or not. It's up to us. We've built a very good operational business besides that. The day-to-day operations are very much not in our hands anymore and haven't been for years. So it's definitely an asset that's appealing. And actually, as I record this, I'm building a software tool. And, same story here. I'm not an engineer, although with the AI tools, I can certainly do more than I used to be able to do. But I'm definitely not going to put something into production that's purely my own work if it requires some complex software. Websites, no problem, but software, not so much. So as I build this business, I know, okay, engineers, if it works, there'll be customer service people, there'll be some sort of marketing department, which ideally will be run by someone else. So I'll be running it to start with. And I know because it's a software business, the margins are potentially great, but it is still a case of balancing, cash flow with growth and ultimately getting the business to a certain point that maybe it will be a sellable asset one day. It's early days. We don't have a single customer yet, so nothing to report there. But I do think about that. I don't want to be a key person and I don't intend to be. It's not a creator-based business, but I probably will do quite a bit of the marketing myself to at least get it started. I'll leave this with an important question for you because you might be thinking about this right now going, I don't know. Do I want to turn my business into a sellable asset? Am I happy to continue to be a key part of this machine and knowing that it makes it more vulnerable? That's the question my coaching client is actually contemplating now as I record this. We speak once a month at the moment and he'll come back to me on what his plans are, but I can tell it's a big decision for him and he's riding a wave right now and he doesn't want to sort of change things too much and wants to capture as much value. When there's a lot of money coming in, you want to just capture and just push as hard as you can. And maybe building systems and hiring a team is not the right way to go. And you may have to even completely change business models, start something up as part of a spin-off of your current creator business that does exist without you. I've seen that many times with creators who launch newsletters where they have a team run the newsletter or launch an e-commerce product where they have, a team focus there on supplying and customer service and delivering this product. Their creator business is still the source of customers, but they're aiming to build something that is sustainable without them. Even an agency, I've seen many creators spin up like a YouTube marketing agency or a podcasting agency, even because they're a podcaster or they're a YouTuber, but they have a team in place, maybe even a co-founder who's running that as a separate company. And that's a great way to kind of leverage the work you've done as a key person and build an audience and then push into something that would be sellable in the future. Bearing in mind, there's obviously still the link. Like you don't want the agency or the e-commerce product or the software tool to rely 100% on new customers from your creator business because that still means that business is very much reliant on you. The idea might be to spin it up with your creator audience, but then slowly move that business to have other sources of new customers, whether it's paid marketing, organic content, affiliates, whatever it is, but you start to build out alternative channels that is not just your creator business. It's a big decision. It's not something that you think about lightly. I think if you're brand new, often the main goal is just to make enough money to survive. That was my goal, so I didn't even think about things like, am I making myself too important to this business? Ultimately, you can always change and evolve and move things, but it's a risky thing to do when you start to get a really big creator business because you can find yourself trapped in the momentum of the business because the minute when you stop creating the videos to go build systems and hire people, the channel starts to decrease, your income starts to decrease, and suddenly you're thinking, wow, if I do this I can't afford to pay the people, so I have to keep pushing hard on making videos or recording podcasts or whatever it is you do as a creator. So it is a juggle, and that's why if you have the opportunity to think about this in advance on some level. I do today just because I know the difference. I definitely recommend you factor that in when deciding on your business model, and even just simple things like how you grow your team. Do you grow a team? Who do you grow first? What people do you hire? There's a lot of decisions along the way. That's why it is great to have a coach, I think, who's been through some of those things before to help you at least, go back and forth and figure out the big picture, but also the day-to-day next steps and, building the team and building the systems. But it's a big decision, but ultimately you might be at a point where you just want to, keep the cash flow going, and that's fine too. Just bear in mind, as my own education business, I didn't sell it. There was one opportunity I had to potentially sell it, but when I was selling it, the buyer was saying, well, you're coming with it and we want you to be there for a year or two to help us transition you out and put in another, content creator in your place. So it wasn't, really a good exit for me in that case either. I'd rather keep my personal brand. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Yarrow Podcast. You can find this anywhere on all the channels for the Yarrow, Yaro podcast. And I'll speak to you on a new episode very soon. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.